In this tutorial, we're going to discuss the successes and failures of two particularly famous and prominent US presidents. The first one is JFK, John F. Kennedy, and the other one is Lyndon Johnson, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Two, very, very well known presidents, Kennedy and Johnson, both actually belonging to the same party, which was the Democratic Party in the USA. And the only reason, well, one of the main reasons why Johnson actually became president was because of John F. Kennedy's assassination in November 1963 in Dallas, when he was shot in the motorcade, most famously. You can look that up on YouTube and you can see it yourself. But he was assassinated and Johnson was his replacement. We're not going to concentrate too much here on the assassination itself. I want to concentrate on Kennedy's actual presidency. So what were his plans and what was he trying to achieve and what did he try to do? When he came to office, you can see in a minute his speech, his inaugural address to the American people, his first speech. And in this speech, he mentioned the new frontier, And this new frontier was Kennedy's big idea, and he asked Americans to be new frontiersmen as part of this big idea. And he wanted to eradicate three things: poverty, and there was a lot of that in America in the early 1960s. In 1960, Kennedy became president. There was a lot of poverty, inequality. Now, you can take from that statement what you will, but I think the particular focus there was on the fortunes of black Americans in particular, and deprivation. Because cities had been expanding at a huge rate in America. You've got these massive metropolis stretching across the United States, and that's going to bring a lot of poverty, of buildings not being looked after or maintained, roads, the transport infrastructure in these cities, things aren't being cleaned. So there's some real issues there, inner cities particularly, with this deprivation. But Kennedy's come in and he's got fresh ideas, and he's got this new approach. He was a very young president at that time, the youngest ever president of the United States. He's good looking, he's got lots of charisma. Have a look at his inaugural address now, and what you'll notice is that charisma just coming across.
Vice President Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chief Justice, President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, President Truman, Reverend clergy, fellow citizens. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world.
What you will also see with Kennedy, he's got new ideas, as we've just mentioned. This new frontier, I mean, yeah, you might see it as a gimmick, but also it's this vibrant energy that he has about him when he becomes president, and that makes him very popular amongst the young. And remember, he is the president representing the Democratic Party, which in itself you could argue is the party perhaps of the young, or representing more the interests of the young. So that's Kennedy's new frontier. The question is now, what did he actually do? Because remember, his presidency was cut short by a year because of the terrible events of November 1963. Well, he did appoint Thurgood Marshall as Supreme Court judge. Supreme Court judge. And this was significant because Thurgood Marshall was a black American. He had to appoint 5 Supreme Court judges, and he chose to appoint a black American as one of the highest judges in the land, which is significant, and it was a significant step for many black Americans at that time. He also, in October 1962, famously sent 20,000 troops to help a black man called James Meredith, to continue with his university education, which was people were attempting to stop him attending a mainly white university, and Kennedy took issue with that, similar to the Little Rock Nine with Eisenhower back in 1957. It's a similar tale. Kennedy basically sends in a number of troops to make sure that this man, who was a man, it's not a child, he's going to university, can get that education. So he's making moves really to try and make things better for black people. And in 1963, he did propose a new civil rights bill, new Civil Rights Act, which would have made all discrimination in public places illegal. And that would also include schools and other areas, theatres, swimming pools, restaurants. I mean, schools were technically already desegregated by then, but any public place, that was the proposition that Kennedy put forward in the 1963 Civil Rights Act. Now, that's really his policy on dealing with this kind of inequality. But he also had policies that tried to maybe improve the economic conditions, the amount of money that Americans had. So he lowered taxes, for example. He lowered taxes. He introduced a massive public works program, similar to the one that maybe Roosevelt introduced in the 1930s, to try and A, give people jobs, B, improve what America actually looks like. One of his biggest proposals was that of Medicare. Medicare would be a slightly watered down version of the NHS that we have in Britain. Free healthcare for the young and for the old. Medicare was actually for the old, and I think that was 65 years plus. And there was also this idea of having Medicaid, which would be for Medicaid, which would be for the young. And Kennedy was also concerned with minimum wage, so he proposed an increase in minimum wage. Sorry, this is a bit everywhere. Increase in min wage. So he tried to do a lot of things really to drive the economy forward and to make things better. But again, limited success. He didn't have a lot of support in Congress. There was opposition to these ideas that he came out with, as you can imagine. The Republicans weren't exactly enthused about a lot of this, and even people within his own party, because he did work with this inner circle of intelligent people gathered from across America that was referred to as the Brains Trust. The Brains Trust. And the Brains Trust was a group of non-party political individuals who were basically exceptionally gifted, and Kennedy gathered them all together and used to make policy decisions with them, make laws with them, draft laws, draft legislation. People didn't like this because they were saying, hang on, why aren't you working with the people from your party? Why are you turning to these people? All in all, he had a lot of fantastic ideas, and that's made him remember. That's secured his legacy as one of the great American presidents, and of course, his assassination added to that legacy. When he was assassinated, you then had Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson carried on Kennedy's. In fact, I'll just put that there. Carried on Kennedy's policies to a great extent with his Great Society idea. The Great Society, again, a big slogan of the Great Society was war on poverty, which was one of Johnson's big ideas. So he cut taxes, following on from Kennedy, who did the same. He cut taxes. He did introduce Medicare, Kennedy's big idea, for over 65s, and Medicaid for the younger generation. So that was free healthcare for them. He also increased benefits. He increased state welfare, and he made sure that people could get medical care if they were on benefits. He also, we talk about deprivation under Kennedy. I'm just going to draw an arrow across, actually, under Johnson, because he introduced something called the Model Cities Act, which looked to rebuild deprived areas of cities, and he ploughed a lot of money into that. That was 1966. He also put a lot of money into education. I suppose one of Johnson's biggest achievements came again. It was initially drafted by Kennedy in 1963, was the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act, which banned discrimination in all, or segregation in all public places. So it really put an end to segregation everywhere. And that was followed in 1965 by the Voting Rights Act, again another crucial piece of legislation. It appointed inspectors to go out and make sure that black people were being able to vote, which they'd been blocked from doing for a number of years previous. So the Voting Rights Act, Rights Act. Very, very important step in civil rights. And he's seen as a president who did a lot for advancing things for black people. The 1960s was a real turning point for them. So you had the New Frontier, you had the Great Society, similar in lots of ways. Both presidents who are known to be successful on that front. Of course, Lyndon Johnson had lots of troubles with Vietnam, which you can look up yourself.